Woo! I'm freezing. It's so cold.
Now Brenden, I don't know if it's as cold in Ocala as it is in Memphis, but it's about 10 degrees
cold
up here.
Enough.
Yeah.
So wear sunglasses inside and have Jake Wimberly on talking numbers.
Hey, and he'll heat it up, man. We got a great one today. Jake Wimberly, Jackson, Mississippi, ESPN 105.9, the afternoon drive. He is the matrix, the numbers, the talent indexes.
I like that. He's the Matrix. That's his new nickname, the Matrix.
He's an engineer.
We're just going to call him the Matrix from now on.
Yeah, the Matrix. And he is. He's the Matrix, the engineer down in Jackson, Mississippi. One of the best. We'll also have Kevin Scarbinsky, U.S. basketball writer, Hall of Famer from Birmingham, talking about SEC basketball again. God, we're blessed to have him. Doug Dean checks in from the Magic City as well.
Chairman of the board.
Chairman of the board. And hey, look, real quick headlines, Brenden. Brenden puts all this stuff together in the morning. Genius. SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey, Big Ten Commissioner, advocating for modifications to the CFP. Who gets in and why? We'll talk more about that. Expanding to 14 or 16 teams. And wow, really feel sorry for Carson Beck. He had his Lamborghini stolen. What a tool. I mean, just,
such a tool.
Go put your money in the stock market or invest it because I don't know if you're going to be in the NFL or not, but you better invest like this is money that's got to last you your lifetime.
Well, yeah, maybe you need to get a better security team, man,
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, do a favor. Take a picture of the QR code. Follow us on X at Rob Browne _ and YouTube and Facebook. We broadcast simultaneously on 7 channels.
SEC Sidelines. Check out click on the QR code, man. You'll take you to the Twitter, X, whatever. That's where it's all dialed in.
Yeah, it really is. And then, this channel at night, 9 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Thursday, the Buddy Martin Show. And on Wednesdays, 5 p.m. Eastern, we have a show with Ronnie Sanders. Doug Dean's on here with us. We do it AU Undercover. I'm on the show. It's an all-Auburn show. So we're going to be bringing in more shows about the different teams in the conference when we find them and make it happen. We have the best EP on the planet. And Jake, let's talk, man. You heard those headlines about modifications to the CFP, but I think what people want to know right now is what's on your mind. The Matrix checks in from the Magnolia State College Football Talent Indexes. What do they got?
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts, right? So we are working right now through numbers, recruiting models, for 2025, also quarterbacks, coaching rankings, all the stuff. Love the Buc-ee's Cup, by the way. New Buc-ee's coming to Long Beach, Mississippi. So Mississippians not happy about that because they're just calling it Buc-ee's of Mississippi. No city name, no Long Beach name. But nonetheless, yeah, Mississippi, getting a Buc-ee's. How about that?
Wow.
But, hey, a lot of moving stuff. So yeah,
I've never been in one. So there you go.
Really?
Yeah, there's getting one of the biggest in the history of time is supposed to be in Ocala here. They're building one. So I'm going to do a video of the first time I go into Buc-ee's. I'm going to send it to the Matrix. That's your new name, by the way.
Send it over this way. But yeah, guys, a lot going on, but nothing bigger than what's going on or what happened this week with Big Ten, SEC meetings, part 3 or 4, whatever this is now, college football expansion. There is no doubt we are going to expand, and we as in the College Football Collective, there is no doubt that the SEC and the Big Ten are going to probably get just about everything they want in this deal. Well,
and I think so. You've got to and Doug Dean will be on here with us in a minute to add something, but it's a cartel is what it really is. And Jake, Greg Sankey and Petiti, the commissioner of the Big Ten, have a lot of power, but I think Greg Sankey got a little fooled. But as that great song by The Who, won't get fooled again, I hope, because SEC should have had more than 3 teams in the playoff last year, Jake.
Well, if you remember, the big talking point from every week that the committee revealed rankings was strength of schedule, right? Everybody kept talking about strength of schedule. And we got down to the tournament, and then it was like, hey, Indiana's strength of schedule versus Alabama's strength of schedule. And that's all that everybody talked about. Well, we know in this world that we live in, strength of schedule is never going to be equal. Not the way we play it right now. You don't have this problem in high school football, junior college, the NFL. It's only college football because the way it's segmented. So it makes sense to me for those that like to cry and kick and whine, well, the SEC and the Big Ten are bullies. The toughest schedules, the toughest leagues year in and year out, where the most talent are is in the Big Ten and the SEC. The most money's coming in with the Big Ten and the SEC.
No question.
So it makes sense that they would get, more opportunities at this than the Big 12 or even the ACC. So they're going to eventually get what they want. Will it be this year? We'll see. Obviously to change the way the seating is, they have to have, voting across the board from all the conferences. But Sankey with a message before these meetings this week said, hey, look, we've told you, and I'm paraphrasing, we're going to tell you what we want. And, if we don't get what we want, we'll go do something different. And I don't know that they want them to do that different, because that means they're going to be left out.
Doug Dean, the Magic City chairman of the board, jump in here.
Jake, good to see you. But I think with a quant background like yours, you really need to go by your actual name, which is, high royalty, like Jackson Poindexter Wimberly the third or something like that. It'll add to your street cred.
We can do that.
I mean, the chairman of the board has spoken, so I don't know.
No, seriously. This is a little contrarian, Rob, and you like to contrarian invest, I think.
Yeah.
I'm an SEC fan if you have to pick. I'm more of an Auburn guy because I'm still got PTSD from the lack of support in 2010. I didn't see a lot of SEC love for that team, and that's the way it goes. There are rivalries, but I think SEC and Sankey and the Petiti, is that his name at the Big Ten? I think they need to be careful not to use too much brute force in what they ask for, and specifically, I don't mean to rile, maybe I do, but I don't mean to rile good Ole Miss fans. I got plenty of friends there, much less Bama, much less South Carolina. But I don't feel too darn sorry for Ole Miss when they couldn't get it done against Kentucky at home, and that would have put them in the playoff. I don't feel too sorry for Alabama when they got kind of embarrassed at a pretty average Oklahoma. And then South Carolina had their troubles, but in some ways South Carolina might have been the hottest of those three late season. So I want them to expand to 14. Eventually, it'll be 16. My guess would be in 2026, the way these contracts run through this year, and they'll have to go to 9 SEC games so that we can make our schedules not perfectly equal, but closer to it. If you're playing 9 games, and then it will be, I'll be ecstatic with a 9-3 regular season. I don't know about you guys. I don't care who your team is. If we go to that schedule, and you're going to get 4 SEC teams in, 9-3 is today's, 11-1 practically.
Yeah, Jake, I agree with that. What do you think?
Oh, I do too. I do too. We talked about this week, and this is just, we're just spitballing and brainstorming here. And my producer actually brought this up, and I think he may be right. He said, the people that may be, because, they're talking about, hey, let's do away first off with automatic bids. Let's go with the seeding, and then let's let the seeding drive, the tournament bracket. So, this past year, 1, 2, 3, 4 would have looked a little different. Oregon, Georgia would have been 1, 2, but then 3, 4 would have been different. That would have thrown your matchups off, totally different. Alabama actually would have gotten in as an 11 seed. But the people that may be the kick at this the most is ESPN. And the reason being is because, hey, without any kind of quote unquote drama, what do they really need those shows for on Tuesday nights? If you're just going by the seeding, which I think they should, then why do you need the shows? Why, of course, that affects ad revenue. That's going to affect everything that goes on at ESPN. So it's not just the conferences that are battling here. I think that there's probably some talk about, how do you continue to keep this thing, a weekly update, a weekly this, a weekly that. But I do agree with Doug on all of that. I think most people would take a 9-3 record in the SEC, which means you're going to be right there in November with you're going to be in that conversation piece.
Yeah, accountability.
What else?
Is key. That's the key.
Rob, any of you guys, Brenden, Jake, if you were running a Chick-fil-A, if I gave you 200 Chick-fil-A franchises and you get to pick the zip codes you want them, and you can still close on Sunday. I think that's in the franchise agreement.
Yeah.
Would you want to only locate them in the Midwest and the Deep South? Wouldn't you want a zip code all across the fruited plain? And the metaphor I'm using there is, if Sankey and Petitti are not careful, they're shrinking the brand from its national footprint, and they're running the risk of fans in places that don't have a big voice. And they say, we're no longer relevant. I don't care how good our team is, whether that's Boise or pick your team. We don't have any mathematical chance to make the playoff. So I'm going to check out of this. I didn't sign up to watch club football at my school. And because you would see NIL start to really fall off if they don't have a chance at a big ROI. So it troubles me that they're using all the power they're vested with vis-a-vis TV leverage. And I think it's a little bit of a dangerous game to play.
On that line, Arizona State got in, and they damn near beat Texas. Boise, not so good. You can't, the term inclusive just to make people feel good is stupid. It's asinine. In the business world, the bottom line is ROI. But eyeballs, if you just wipe out, Jake, a whole segment, the West Coast and the Northeast, somehow we got to find a way to get college football. I guarantee you, I don't guarantee you, but I'll speculate, Jake, the ratings for college football, TV ratings in the New York City market, Boston, Philadelphia, are abysmal. So somehow, back in the 70s, college football was a regional game. We've made it a national game. You're right. I agree with what Doug said.
I do too. I mean, it's a delicate dance, right? I mean, it really is. I mean, I see all sides here, and Doug's actually absolutely right. It's how do you get that interest up in places like you talked about, Boston, New York, where LA, even where USC is, and where you've got the Lakers and you've got the Celtics and you've got all this national, professional football, professional baseball, basketball. Obviously it works in the South, works well in the South because, there's not a lot of pro teams down here. Obviously there is in pockets, but it's a big deal here. But to Doug's point, I think you're right. You have to be careful not to alienate, parts of the country, the Midwest, or, not the Midwest, you mean the far West. There's a lot of places that you don't want to do that to. And of course, if you start talking about, you're going to start taking money and taking spots from, places like the Big 12, then that ultimately affects a lot of those markets.
And can someone make sense for me that I don't think we've had enough time, it's only 1 year in, to understand the travel challenges when you've got Oregon and USC masquerading as Midwest Big Ten teams. That just, to me, it just really did violence to the regional flavors, if you will, of I'd like to I'd like to get back that Pac-12 where they were high octane, and it created this intrigue that when USC or UCLA, when they were playing well, which has been a minute, and they go against these power football lineups, smash mouth ball, mostly play action, and you contrast those styles, and it was oftentimes the high octane guys would carry the day, and we're sort of killing that. We're mashing it. It's like mashed potatoes, and they're gonna have to have USC is gonna have to have the ability to go into a cold environment in November with snow on the ground and play. And of course, you could say, well, that happens in the NFL. I'm not sure it's the same, but I probably sound like Clint Eastwood on my porch yelling at the kids to get off the lawn, though.
Not really. I mean, here's another one: Notre Dame in Chicago. I mean, for every friend of mine that goes up to South Bend for a game, they hit Chicago, they hit the big steakhouses and, a couple of those bars and get hammered and drink some old style and some hams. But it's like college football. I've got friends that live in Chicago and Oak Park and places. They're like, it's as if it doesn't exist. St. Louis, Missouri. Man, that is not a college football town. That is St. Louis Cardinals. And after that, it's a bowling town. Across the street from Busch Stadium, Jake, is the International Bowling Hall of Fame. But Jake, before you go, kind of tease us, and we're going to get with you next week if you'll be kind enough to come on with us, the Matrix Man, about your talent indexes. Kind of put it out there, and then I'll let you go, and then Kevin Scarbinsky will hop on. But thank you so much, as always, for sharing your time with us.
Absolutely. Doug, always great to see you, sir. And of course, Brenden, I will talk to you later this week, and Rob as well. Yeah, real quickly, we'll talk about this next week. Talent, been churning through a lot of the talent. I'll send this over so we can look at this next week. But, used to was 5-6 years ago. You could accumulate talent and figure talent on a 3-year metric, a 4-year metric. Now, you got to, I think, comb this thing back. We're working with several different models over the last 24 months. Dating back to last year, do we do a 2-year roster churn with transfer portal, that kind of stuff? But I think we've got a really good formula that fell pretty well last year. Just some surprises here, guys. Georgia sliding back a little bit on the talent scale. That doesn't mean that they're in trouble to go 7-5 or anything of that nature. But Oregon continues to climb. The University of Miami continues to climb. Texas, #1 talent profile in the SEC. And look, quietly watch what LSU is doing. Watch what Auburn is doing. I think we know Auburn has put a ton of money into that program this year. And the last 2 years they have recruited extremely well. So it should be fun. We'll talk about that next week.
Jake, thank you, man. That is great stuff. I'm already on the edge wanting to hear about it. Have a great weekend.
Same to you guys. Appreciate it.
Okay. Let me say something real quick about one of our sponsors, Winter Timber Outdoors, before Kevin Scarbinsky comes on. Located in the top of Alabama, up on right outside of Huntsville, right next to Huntsville, in Athens, Alabama. Winter Timber open every day of the week. The shooting sports, and there are a lot of them right now. Everybody's getting ready, and Doug's a big turkey hunter. Doug will concur with my belief that it is like chasing a ghost trying to kill a turkey. And if they could smell like they see and hear, no one would ever kill a turkey. They got the slate calls, the box calls, and the ammunition, the turkey legs, and everything you need, the camo patterns. Right now, it's turkey season. It's a big deal. Get everything you need, all your gear. And remember, they're building a store in Auburn. They're looking in locations throughout the Southeastern Conference footprint, and something soon, and hopefully going to be announced in the Memphis market. Winter Timber Outdoors, folks. We're proud to have them as a sponsor. They're good people. And let's say this. Brenden just sent me a very worthy thing to say that Clay Travis put out. And we've got Kevin Scarbinsky on here with us, U.S. basketball writer, Hall of Famer, the only one ever from the state of Alabama. And boy, was Kevin clairvoyant, prophetic, ESP. He's got some kind of extraterrestrial powers on what happened last weekend. And follow Kevin on X, man. This guy is a just nonstop newspaper. How do you learn? You write things down. The writers are your best guests because they think about what they're saying. But real quick, in the past 3 months, the Tyson Paul fight and the USA-Canada hockey game have come out of nowhere to produce huge audiences and attention. It feels like there's a huge pent-up demand for commercial sports experiences that everyone watches together. That from Clay Travis. And I can't help but say, Kevin, you were right. The TV numbers backed me up on that Auburn-Alabama basketball game, the highest for any game in America this year, including that scrap over there in North Carolina and Duke, which is still a big game.
Well, good morning, everyone. A few weeks ago, I laid it out that if you go back to the year that Bruce Pearl got Auburn rolling, they won the SEC regular season in 18, then they won the tournament and got to the Final Four in 19. If you combine Alabama and Auburn's records, conference record, overall record, conference championships, and compare that to Duke and North Carolina, the Iron Bowl of basketball is the better rivalry right now. And again, the numbers show it. The numbers show it this year. The results on the floor show it this year. Auburn #1, a clear #1, despite what Ken Palm or BPI. We got to get rid of this BPI metric. It is so. Kansas fell from 9 to 11 after getting destroyed by BYU. They still include their preseason metrics, which is absolutely ridiculous. But anyway, I digress. But no, the level of basketball in that rivalry across the state at the D1 level, the D2 level, the number 3 D2 team in America is UAH, Alabama Huntsville, which is where Chaney Johnson, who has become a monster for Auburn, came from. He transferred from there. He's from Alabaster Thompson High School, which is known for winning state high school football championships at the highest level. So, no, basketball's never been this good, this deep across the state. We're going to have the high school state tournament here in Birmingham starting Monday, and that's something else that Alabama innovated back in 1994. Every class, 1 through 7, boys and girls, semifinals and finals, same place. We alternate girls, boys, from Monday through Saturday until we determine 14 state champions, 7 boys, 7 girls. So basketball's been good here for a long time. It's been innovative here in a number of ways, but it's never been this good. And it's had its lulls, it's had its down moments, but this is very special what's happening now.
Yeah, Kevin, that's a brilliant point. And I'll be watching. How can we watch it before Doug? I just want to say, what TV channel can you watch it streaming or whatever? Because that's a lot of bad. It's like they do in Texas for the football championships.
Yeah, well, Monday through the semifinals conclude Thursday morning it goes 1 and 2A on Monday, 3A, 4A on Tuesday, 6A, 5A in reverse order on Wednesday with the semifinals, and then the 7A semifinals on Thursday morning. Those are all available on WOTM across the state of Alabama and the NFHS network streaming all of those games. And then once we get to the finals, starting on Thursday afternoon with the 1A girls final, those will all be on Alabama Public Television over the air. And I believe they stream them live from their website, apt.org. I think it's aptv.org. I think. Check that out to be sure.
Okay. All right.
Kevin, good morning. I'm glad to see you're healthy and well. I was going to do a wellness check when you tweeted or X'd or whatever you're supposed to call that now again about the outstanding Crimson Tide basketball program, that it's been 3, it might be 4 halves that they have not led, surrendering 50 plus. So I'm glad you're doing okay, Kevin. I'm just having some fun there. But and Kevin's very qualified to talk about the following. There have always been elite, talented.
Yes, a few Alabama fans didn't appreciate that, Doug.
Yeah, I think that people get where I was. They're painting what I'm priming there. But there have always been some elite players over the years. But what has changed, especially since Nate Oates and Bruce Pearl, is that the players in the Deep South, especially the state of Alabama, that are elite enough to get recruited by Calipari when he was at Kentucky, by Krzyzewski when he was at Duke, North Carolina, we were losing some of the very best play. And the thing about basketball, you don't need 30 great players. You need 2 or 3 big-time difference makers, and almost overnight you can elevate your program. So now, and I think Feinbaum made a great point on Rob's show, he said it wasn't self-serving, but even if it was, it's fair game. The advent of the SEC network and the exposure that kids here in the Deep South, they could see Auburn and Alabama, any team practically, on TV Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Saturday, sometimes Sunday. The exposure is there, and they're second to none, as we saw last Saturday in Tuscaloosa, an epic environment, mostly a clean game, a couple of weird incidents by both sides of the rivalry, but a mostly clean game that I think the best team won. But it wouldn't be the most shocking thing in the world if Alabama strolled into Neville Arena and got hot that day, and the visiting team wins both of those. So, yeah. But do you agree that what's changed is we're keeping our very best players at Alabama or Auburn more than we may have in the past?
I think that's true. I think the exposure is a big part of it. When you turn on the television and you see College Game Day, the very first on-site College Game Day of the season is from Auburn, Alabama. And then 3 weeks later, they're in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. That tells you something. You see students at both schools, Auburn on a regular basis, Alabama did it for the Auburn game, camping out. You see the coaches and players taking pizzas to the students. You see the atmosphere in the building. You see the light show. The light show they do in Tuscaloosa now with the infrared. I call them infrared lights, and they do the cell phone cameras while they yell roll tide. It's just it gives you chills when you're in these environments. I was at Samford the other night. The environment there, their students. I was at UAB on Sunday. Not a full house, but a loud, enthusiastic crowd. Yeah. UAB's near the top of the American Conference. Samford is not at the top of the SoCon. They've dropped a little bit. They're a couple games out, but they've tied it or won it outright the last couple of years. So the level of basketball, people have started to notice. They've started to show up, and really, you have to credit Auburn as the Pied Piper of this movement, if you will. First of all, building that arena while Tony Barbee was the head coach.
Yeah.
Not Bruce Pearl. They weren't
that
going
was
to the
visionary.
Final Four they weren't going to the Final Four when they built that building. They were hopeful of one day, maybe. But that shows some incredible foresight on Auburn's part, and to build it the right size, and most importantly, to cater to the students.
Here.
That's one huge contrast, and there are many, and Doug, you could point out far more than I could probably, the differences between Auburn and Alabama. Look at where the Auburn students sit, courtside, baseline to baseline. Some of them are in the end zones as well, but baseline to baseline, one side of the court, that's the jungle. You walk into Coleman Coliseum, where are the students? They're up in the corner. They can't have quite the same impact where they're sitting. So, but they are there. That's just it. They're showing up. They're loud. They're proud. And really, I give Auburn credit for leading this revolution. There's been a lot of discussion, especially going into that Iron Bowl of basketball, about Auburn and Alabama. And whether Stephen Pearl's somewhat controversial, not so much to me, statement that Alabama hired Nate Oates because Auburn went to the Final Four. Well, it wasn't so much they chose Nate Oates. It was that they recognized they needed a new coach. Avery Johnson was not going to get him to a level where they could compete with Auburn under Bruce Pearl. And so that was an incentive for Alabama to go get who they thought was the best possible coach they could get. And they nailed it, obviously, Nate Oates.
Great.
Guys, I'm going to ask both of y'all. I mean, you look at this weekend's schedule, and I've been saying this, and again, Buddy Martin gave that information about what Clay Travis was saying. People love the communal spirit of sports. For the state of Alabama, this is big. The state of Florida, you got the Gators rolling. In Missouri, look what Dennis Gates is doing. And I'm gonna throw a question out here. Is Dennis Gates your SEC Coach of the Year? And then do you put Todd Golden and Bruce Pearl in the mix for National Coach of the Year? And I know why, but kind of maybe y'all put it in the vernacular for the viewers. Why one is SEC Coach of the Year and the other ones are more National Coach of the Year?
I think that's a good distinction, Rob. It is such a difficult award to choose because it's not a level playing surface or level court, if you will. Missouri didn't win an SEC game last year. Not one.
Yeah.
0-18 in the regular season, 0-1 in the conference tournament. And they just knocked off the number 2 team in the country in an incredible environment. That fan base there. I was at the Samford game that night. I was able to get home and flip back and forth between Auburn and Alabama games in the later stages of the second half of both. And the environment in Missouri looked just incredible. So what Dennis Gates has done has been pretty amazing. But what Bruce Pearl has done has been pretty amazing. I don't think people – now, I suggested – I'm not going to say I predicted it, but – the first day of the first game of the season, I wrote a column saying, don't discount the possibility of a dream Final Four, a dream national championship game, the Iron Bowl of basketball. And it could happen. So, what Bruce Pearl did, look, they were ranked, 11 in the preseason? Alabama was number 2 behind Kansas. Alabama, it was the debate was Alabama or Kansas. Who should be preseason number 1? Auburn wasn't in that debate.
Yeah.
They were supposed to be good. They've exceeded, I think, most people's expectations because they have constructed an all-time great resume to this point.
I don't have any great take, Kevin, as always. I've been fortunate because I do business with some folks in Kansas City, and have been able to take in the epic home game at Allen Fieldhouse
Wow.
at Kansas. And I can tell you that what Missouri, I like to call it Missouri, Rob, what they are doing is not sitting well with those somewhat haughty. I love them. There's no more high IQ fan base than Kansas. If you ever get to go there during a game,
Yeah.
man, they just choreographed. It's beautiful, but they're a little haughty. Most of us would be with all of that hardware they've hung on in the trophy room. But you look at the first bracket that the NCAA released. If we were playing this week, that would have been, I guess, yesterday. You know, the reward you get for being in the SEC, especially the top 3 or 4 that are making a case for a 1 seed, your reward is pretty likely that you're going to get to play a tough SEC team again. At least several of them look like they would. And if you're Duke, if you go by this bracket, you're staring at Missouri right there. I guess it would be the Sweet 16. Round 2 or the Sweet 16, and that's not a fun matchup for anybody, including Duke. So, and if you look at Florida, could face either Ole Miss or Kentucky to make it to the Elite 8, and Alabama would be with Mississippi State. Auburn might have to play Texas A&M to make the Elite 8 or Final Four. It's going to be a fascinating. Now, what we could end up with is teams rising up and taking down SEC powers. That can happen in March Madness when you've got 1 game elimination. My team that we don't talk about that I'm afraid can be a real headache in this tournament is St. John's when you got Rick Pitino there. Man, they play some defense. They can't score, but they could beat somebody 55-50.
Yeah, ironically, that they can't shoot it. They don't shoot the 3 very well. And that's where Rick Pitino came to prominence with Providence and Billy Donovan in 1987, the first year of the 3-point shot, when they took down number 2 seed Alabama in the Sweet 16 in Louisville. That was a team that I think I was convinced at the time that was a Final Four team. Derek McKee, Terry Conner at the point, Jim Farmer, Mark Gottfried.
Great team.
That was a great team. They swept the SEC championships. And they got run by Providence shooting all these threes. Billy Donovan, Delray Brooks. But Rick Pitino, and what he's done for as long as he's done it, put aside his off the court issues and foibles, and he's as good a basketball coach as there's probably ever been at the college level with what he's done for as long as he's done it at many different places.
Scarbo, if I was going to make the case for National Coach of the Year, it's still a little early to declare anyone, but I could happily make a case for at least 5 or 6 coaches. We talked about Missouri's coach, unbelievable turnaround. But if I were asked to make the case for Bruce, I would lead with it's historic. And I'm quoting the pundits. I'm not making things up to fit the case, presuming what I'm trying to prove. But to have what is our 14-1 in quad 1 games right now?
Oh, 14-2, I think. Yeah.
Who's counting? And historic analytics in what all the pundits are saying is not just the toughest league the SEC has ever fielded, but the toughest, the most capable, deep, whether you look at the middle, the bottom tier, the top end, potential of 13 teams being selected. That for Bruce Pearl, he didn't go out and procure 6 or 8 5-stars or McDonald's All-Americans. He's got some elite players. He went to mid-majors and UAH and places like that, and painstakingly over several years built it like from scratch. They had talent, but those kids weren't all being recruited by all the blue bloods. So for Bruce, against this degree of difficulty, and with players that he developed to deliver the analytics and record that they have so far, he's going to be hard to not consider for Coach of the Year.
Yeah, and guys, you're talking about Rick Pitino. I've got his book, Success is a Choice. I'm a big fan of his, and we know what's happened with him. But the guy knows how to win. He knows how to coach, and he's exciting to watch. You think about player development. What's harder to do as a coach? Have a roster full of guys that are high fours or McDonald's All-Americans, having like Kentucky had, and a roster full of malcontents that if they're not getting the ball enough, they're walking around with a pout face, spreading the dreary wearies all over the place. We all know that one from the ramble. My wife can say it. I can't remember it all. But I think about that. Or do you get a bunch of kids that are 2s and 3s? And coaches, if they're honest, will tell you, if I could have my dream come true, it would be my number ones work as hard in practice and in the classroom and in everything else as my 2s and 3s do. That's the dream of a coach. That's what Pearl has. And you look at Todd Golden, look at Florida, guys. I don't know, apparently he and Bruce Pearl are pretty close. I know Todd was director of basketball operations under Pearl. But look at that Florida roster. Look at Walter Clayton Jr., okay, from Lake Wales. Played for Iona, came back. But look at, Condon. He's from Australia, the country, not a town in, South Mississippi. He is building. It's the same thing. Now, who has more talent on their roster? Nate Oates, Todd Golden, Bruce Pearl. Which of those three has the most talented, high-ranking roster?
Well, there's no question it's Alabama. They've gone out and they've gotten 5 stars. LeBaron Philon from Mobile, he was committed to Auburn, or he was interested in Auburn. He's committed to Kansas, and he changed his mind, and he's now at Alabama. But Mark Sears wasn't, their best player, their preseason National Player of the Year candidate, who scored 35 in that Missouri loss, was not a 5-star. He went to Ohio to work on his game, and he worked on his game. And that's why he became an elite player. And last year he scored more points in a single season than anybody in Alabama history. He's not the most talented player Alabama's ever had. He's one of the most productive. So it really is, it's getting guys in the right situation. That Auburn team, one of the things that makes it special is they have everything you want. They've got the perimeter game. They've got the post game. They play defense on the perimeter. They play defense at the rim, but they're connected. You just watch those guys. Watch how happy they are when one of their teammates makes a play. Now, we saw an incident early in the season with Ja'Kai Howard. Somebody else was going off, and he was open for a couple of threes, but somebody was on a heater, and he didn't get the ball, and you could see visibly his body language was terrible. He was dropping his head. He was dragging his butt back down the court. That was a rare incident with this team because this team is together. This team is happy for each other when they make a play. And this team has so many guys who are unafraid to try to make a play. The 3 that Tahad Pettiford hit in that Alabama game, after Alabama ties it and the roof's about to come off the place, and Mark Sears takes one from about 28 feet, and if he had hit it, would have given Alabama its first lead. We might have had the roof come off. Then Auburn comes down the floor. They don't have numbers. There's only 2 Auburn guys, and there are 4 Alabama defenders back. Pettiford doesn't care. He doesn't blink. He pulls up in front of the Auburn bench, and he drains a 3 to give Auburn back the lead.
And Bruce said that was a good shot.
And for him, it was.
Yeah.
And they encourage him.
Nobody at the rim.
They would have been more discouraged if he hadn't taken it than they were if he had taken it and missed. So again, this Auburn team is special. But again, it's guys that have grown up. They've been, except for Pettiford, they've been through it. Denver Jones at FIU.
It is not
Morehead State.
Sorry, I walked on you, Kevin. It is not easy. It's not easy, even for Bruce, to, as you recruit players, to tell the truth and sell them on. You're not going to have 30 minutes every game. That's not who we are. That's not what I'm building. Yeah. But lucky for Bruce, not luck. They're earning this. The players are, and that's an underrated coaching staff, Scarbo, that knows how to dissect and deconstruct what the opponent's doing and put a game plan in and adjust on the fly with the game plan some games. But the winning is, Coach Stallings loved to say the fun is in the winning, which is Captain Obvious. But if you can achieve this kind of notoriety, and you're sitting at, what is it, 7 weeks now, #1 in the poll, that'll probably come crashing down eventually. But then all of a sudden, it's a lot easier to get buy-in, not just from this current team, but whoever you're recruiting's watching all of this and say, you know what, they'll develop me. I might not go after 1 year, but this looks like a lot of fun. And then all of a sudden you can get momentum going.
I agree with that. Guys, I totally agree with that. And nothing's worse than somebody with a bad attitude. You know, I got a thing on the freezer. It says, I don't need your attitude. I've got my own. I like that. It's a little magnet. Okay, let's look at this schedule, guys. This is great stuff. Executive Producer Brenden Martin putting all this stuff, graphics and stuff up here. And I'm going to go with the schedule for tomorrow. Now, other than the fact that tomorrow is my daughter Hallie's birthday, she'll be 29. Holy cow. God, I remember it like it was yesterday. 7:47 a.m., February 22nd of 96. And now she's got a son, Alexander the Great. Love this kid. And my grandson. And they love sports. We've grown up with it. It's because of the great writers. And by the way, guys, Buddy Martin, I got to be on his show last night with him and Franz Beard. God, that is like taking a kid to Baskin Robbins and saying, get whatever you want and get your friends whatever they want. But it's going to be about the sports.
Pistachio almond, by the way.
He was talking about, do what?
Pistachio almond.
Yeah. I mean, there ain't anything more fun than having kids. But if there is, it's called having grandkids. Because I've been to the zoo 8 times the last 3 months. I love the zoo. We go so much, we might just go see one exhibit for a while. But I digress. But talking about these basketball games, Buddy's talking with an intern. Buddy told this story last night, and he said he wants to be a writer. And he said, I want to really push him to be a writer. That's really good. And he goes, who are the writers that you read? And he said, well, Stephen A. Smith. He goes, no. He's not a writer. He's a yeller.
No, he's a ranter, not a writer.
But he is interesting. He is passionate about everything. I think he'd be a fun guy to have on this show, or just the group of us to go have a few road sodas with in downtown Birmingham at one of the many great restaurants. But look at this schedule, guys. He should say Kevin Scarbinsky and Doug Dean, because both of you, and Franz Beard and Buddy and Tony Barnhart. Kentucky's at Alabama tomorrow. Wow. Missouri's at Arkansas. Georgia at Auburn, as they say in the Northeast, Auburn or Auburn. Florida at LSU. Texas at a winless South Carolina team. And look at all of the close calls they've, and they're winless. That's how good this league. Tennessee at A&M. And Ole Miss at Vanderbilt. Mississippi State at Oklahoma. Other than the fact it's my daughter's birthday and I'll be spending time with her, I will be glued to apps and TV screens. What about y'all? I mean, any of these games jump out at you besides all of them? And St. John's UConn coming up on Sunday if you didn't get enough on Saturday. God, you can't get enough of this stuff.
The biggest game, obviously, is Kentucky-Alabama, because Alabama, with those 2 straight losses now, they're 2 games behind Auburn. Florida's 2 games behind Auburn. Auburn's created a little breathing room there. But Alabama's closing schedule, after playing Auburn and Missouri, they got Kentucky, then they got Mississippi State, at Tennessee, Florida, and at Auburn. That is brutal. When they get to the NCAA tournament, if they had a 6-game progression to get to the national championship game, it will not be as hard as their final 6-7 games of the regular season in the SEC. Not even close. But it certainly is a must win if Alabama wants to win the SEC regular season, because they got a chance to take at least 1 game from Auburn and bring them back to the pack a little bit. But they almost have to win that one at home against Kentucky. They had that shootout in Rupp, guess it was a month or so ago now. So that game will be entertaining because there will be a lot of points scored. By the way, here's a fun fact. Since Nate Oates has been there, I know a lot of Alabama fans are already there climbing out on ledges because they scored 98 and got beat by 12. But since he's been there, you know what their record is in games where Alabama scores 90 plus? 56-5. So they're usually they're in good shape when they score 90 plus. And
it's
usual to score 98 and get beat. But so I think they'll be all right. But that's a big one. That's one. And Kentucky, here's how good has Kentucky been? The resume making wins they have, and they're 7-6 in the SEC. That tells you a lot about the quality of that league this year.
Scarbo, I got you can help here because you really have granular knowledge of basketball more than I've ever had. But if whoever earns the overall 1 seed, that's the South region, which is Lexington. Will those games, some of those games, be in Rupp Arena? Do you know, or is it more of a?
Yes. Now let me point out, and I was noodling.
You know where I'm going with that.
I was noodling with this the other day. The number 1 overall seed and the teams that are in contention for that, they get the NCAA will ask them where they want to play. They get a choice. That's why Alabama, obviously a couple of years ago, they were the number 1 overall seed and they wanted to come to Birmingham. It was fortunate for them that Birmingham was a first and second round site. So actually the regional, Lexington is a first and second round site. It's most likely that Auburn will go there.
Yeah.
And then now remember they can have more than one teams that are headed to more than one regional at the same first and second round site. That's one of the changes that the tournament's made over the years.
Yeah.
So the regional that Auburn wants is Atlanta. That's the South region. That's where the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 games will be. That's where Auburn will choose that. Obviously.
Because it would be just like Big Blue fans to pour 8,000 Kentucky fans into Auburn playing in Rupp Arena to try to get Auburn beat.
That's an interesting point, Doug. Would they do that, or would they
send their fans
would they
to
cheer
work
for
Kentucky?
the SEC team? That's a really
hell no, they wouldn't.
Look, the way Auburn fans travel, there may not be 8,000 seats available for any other fan base.
Well, the little footnote I'm making on it is the possibility. There's a lot of, it may be 5 games, but there's a lot of basketball to play, and a lot can change in a hurry. But and Alabama fans do not need to be down on their team. They are built to make a deep run. They can make an Elite 8 run or Sweet 16. And if you get to Sweet 16, even Auburn, I would say this about. At that point, you better be playing your A game if you want to punch your ticket to the Final Four. But I'm looking, Kevin, at that March 1st. It's a Saturday, either a noon or a 3 p.m. game. Auburn at Kentucky. I would pick Kentucky. I think that could be the one loss and remaining here, and you got to worry about going to College Station as well. But if Auburn can break that Rupp Arena jinx and win that one, that would carry a lot of confidence. That would probably wrap up, if I had to guess, looking at schedules, Auburn might wrap up the SEC regular season before even playing Alabama on March 8th.
That's very possible. Yeah. Look, Auburn should beat Georgia tomorrow. They've got Ole Miss coming in the midweek game. And if they win both of those, then you've got a 2-game lead with 3 to play. And then they go, as you said, back to back, 2 Kentucky and 2 Texas A&M. You go one, you split those, win at least one, and they're of course capable of winning.
They can't beat you.
They're capable of winning out. But if they win one of those, then you're guaranteed a share at least of the regular season. But overall, and look, Joe Lunardi said it last week, they've got a couple game cushion, not as a number 1 seed, as the overall number 1 seed.
God.
Think about that. They got a cushion. They could drop a couple and still be the number 1 overall seed. That's how impressive the resume they've constructed has been.
Yeah, and you got to stay healthy from here. That's why I dread the SEC tournament, because it will mean very little except to some teams that are boosting their resume.
Here's one for you. Now, you go back the wins, and we talked about this last night, and there's the national narratives or what they are, but let's focus in on y'all. Biggest win in the SEC. Florida goes and beats number 1 Auburn in Auburn. Auburn at number 1 goes and beats number 2 in Tuscaloosa. You got 3 strong ass teams. I sound like Will Wade, strong ass offer. But And he's doing it, by the way, at McNeese, and he's a good. But I
Which
just thinking
SEC
about this
team is going to pull the trigger and hire him after this year?
Yeah, that's your question, because the Gators. I mean, look, now they've got. Hey, Kevin and Doug, y'all are both great writers. If you
don't put me in the same breath with Scarbo.
Well, Scarbo's Hall of Fame writer, but I mean,
yeah, I'm a preferred walk-on.
the great writer. I learned everything, and I learned everything I ever learned. Even though we have printouts and computers and screens, I still write it down. That process of taking it from your cerebellum to paper and the repetition is the mother of all skill. But the Gators win in Auburn. That thing's carrying a lot of weight. And now Condon, they haven't been healthy. And Auburn's everybody's banged up. Everybody's got guys to play. But we've got such a compelling story to write about. And in Florida, they're rolling. Walter Clayton is a hell of a player. And then Micah Handglotten takes off the red shirt. I mean, Kevin, you got some skin in the game down there in Gainesville in the O-Dome. And by the way, we're going to bring in Brad Bellamy from Landers Ford in Memphis to this conversation. I don't think they're going to touch these arenas for a while. Everything's going into the NIL, fund. But this, I mean, we're not even talking football. We talked a little football with Jake Wimberly in the first segment, but it is must-watch Saturday basketball. So, Brad Bellamy, jump in here. Landers Ford, blessed to have y'all as a sponsor. And Brad, I know, loves to watch his college basketball on a Philco TV. Remember the old deal? The Vols always look better on a Philco in the days of black and white TVs. But, Brad, you watch a lot of college basketball, and the great folks out at Landers, you had your President's Day opportunities. I don't call them, good deals on cars, because that's part of the built-in process when you deal with Landers is you have opportunities. And I know people that have been buying vehicles from y'all for a long time. I got one friend that said he's bought 17 trucks from y'all, and he's coming back, and he said, it's the relationships that you have. So let's tell people what's going on at landersfordmemphis.com, and then get you, if you will, talk some basketball with this esteemed panel of very smart people.
Hey, good morning, guys. Good morning, Rob. Yeah, man, right now we're in the throes of truck month. Obviously, the winter weather this week kept a little more people than we would like inside their houses, but school is back in session today, and we're excited for the weekend, last weekend of the month for us, because February 28th is a Friday, so that's our month-end close. So huge deals, guys, on F-150 and Lightning. I found out from my Ford rep, there's not many Lightnings left on the ground. We actually have 3 of the last 40 in the entire Memphis region, which goes all the way to 9 different states, including Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, and most of Tennessee. And we got them here to sell. 0 for 72 plus big rebates. Plus, if you qualify, you get a $7,500 down payment as an IRS tax credit on those Lightnings, up to $14,000 off on our F-150s. $5,000 of that is Ford rebate. Plus, if you trade in a Ram, an extra $2,000. Trading it all, it's $1,000. So some pretty big deals, guys, to close out our 24s and with truck month going on with Ford. If you haven't seen them yet, you're going to start seeing an abundance of Lainey Wilson ads because she is our truck month spokesperson. And we're really excited about Lainey and the partnership she has with Ford. Quick story about Lainey. Before she was on Yellowstone, before she became as famous as she is, her first time to go to the CMA Awards, she reached out to us in the region when I was on the corporate side. And she said, hey, when I go to the CMAs, I got to be in a Ford. And we actually put her in a Bronco. My friends at Two Rivers Ford put her in a Bronco, and she put up to her first CMAs in a Ford Bronco. She's a Ford girl from Winsboro, Louisiana. And, man, we're so excited to bring her into the fold and get her away from those folks with one of the other brands. So,
Brad.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, good to see you, Brad. I was just going to say some real ad genius on Madison Avenue to pick a young woman, talented young woman, whose signature song is "Heart Like a Truck."
Well, and 4x4 by You is also the song that's probably going to be like a Taylor Swift song that everybody's going to stop wanting to sing because they've heard it so much over the next 6 weeks. So, but we're really pumped, guys, about having her. And man, we got trucks and we're ready to sell and make every deal we can to close out a really strong month for us. We've already sold more this month than we did in January, and that's with having 2 days where folks were afraid to get out thanks to our Memphis traffic reporters. So, guys, it's also going to be a nice weather day. Saturday's also going to be a nice basketball day, which I know you guys have been talking about already. I do not see a scenario at which Auburn doesn't have the number 1 seed in the SEC, doesn't win the SEC regular season. That game last week against Alabama, I think that was their test to get there. And I just don't see them dropping down the stretch enough games to make up. And because it's not really even 2 games, it's 3, if you think about the tiebreaker scenarios and everything else. So I think it'd be a hard press to believe that they could fall that much. But it is the SEC. You never know who's going to not show up all of a sudden. I mean, we see Tennessee over the years go through stretches, Alabama go through stretches where they just kind of, that Missouri loss, back-to-back losses, and then the stretch they got. I mean, I'm a little bit concerned. Not only do they play themselves out of a 1 seed, but with the competition they're playing, they can play themselves out of a 2 seed. I don't think that's going to happen, but I mean, there's a pretty big stretch here that they all of a sudden help boost a couple of other teams' resumes. They could fall back behind.
Yeah, and by the way, Brad, I drive an F-150 and 4-wheel drive with the all-terrain tires. I've been getting around, and I'll be in Memphis again today. Got to go out to Collierville. They Ford F-150. And I got a text from a friend of mine from Collierville's son. And he said, hey, Mr. Browne, my dad said, you have a badass F-150, because I took him out in the field in the mud, duck hunting several times this year, and we never got stuck. Some of the other brands did, but I won't mention them on the air. But guys, let's talk some basketball. Kevin Scarbinsky, Doug Dean. And by the way, Brenden Martin, his birthday will be next Tuesday. He will be, celebrating, and we're going to have to do something cool
He'll
for
be
Brenden.
31 years old. I can't believe
32, I think. 32. So, hey, his dad just sent that to me, so I'm glad I know that now. So, guys, I want to start with Kevin, and then Doug, and then Brad. Everybody give me your top 5 SEC basketball players right now. And it can be any position. It's a lot different probably than we used to come up with 20 or 30 years ago.
Oh, gosh. Put me on the spot there. Well, obviously, Janai Broome, he's player of the year, should be national player of the year. I don't care about the national pro Duke contingent that continues to push Cooper Flag as he dominates the weakest ACC ever. So obviously you've got him in the post. Mark Sears at the point. Walter Clayton should be on there. Well, Florida's guards. Florida in general is not getting the national respect, and they are not as deep a part of the national discussion as they should be. That team is dangerous, and they, as you said, they've not been healthy. Gosh, who what does that give me? That gives me 3 right there. Help me out here, guys. Who am I missing?
Zakai Ziegler?
Maybe.
No. I would not put him in the first 5. I mean, look, he's a very good player. That's why
who's a kid at Mizzou? You got to have him in consideration.
Which one?
I know. Yeah, that's the thing.
Which one? The post?
The one that really lit it up the other night.
Duke Caleb Grill. Caleb Grill, the 3-point shooter who lit up Alabama the other night. Obviously, he's had a great season. Asa Newell from Georgia, they're not as good as a team. They've fallen off. He's one of the best freshmen in the league, in the country. I'm blanking on individuals.
Who would you guys put? I mean, would you put Ziegler in the top 5?
I don't know that I would.
I'd have him on the bubble, I guess.
They beat Florida without him. That big win in Knoxville, and that's a big game. Well, Wade Taylor, the 4th from Texas A&M, is just clutch. He's probably one of the top 5. It would be guard heavy, I think. I think that's the way the game's gone. That, like I said, that Florida guard trio, they haven't all been together. but for a lot of games recently, they've had one or the other has been hurt. But I don't know. That's a really good question. It's going to be a tough call for the league coaches when they vote on that, when the media votes on that.
Rob, I confess I don't have a granular knowledge of every SEC team's frontliners, but just throwing a couple in there, I think it borders on no-brainer that you've got to put the National Player of the Year contender at the one spot, Jani Broome. He's not perfect, and he probably won't get drafted as high as even Flag, I guess, and possibly a couple of others. But I'm still going to have, whether it's 2 or 3-ish, maybe 4, I'm going to have Mark Sears in there because you see what he's capable of. Goodness gracious. And he was huge in getting that Alabama-Auburn game tied, and I was needing some anxiety meds, Brad, at that point, because you could feel the crowd getting jazzed. So Mark Sears is still – he's not perfect, and I'm sure he wishes that he was on a growth hormone in younger years to be just a couple or 3 inches taller, but he plays around that anyway. And then I think just outside the top 5, this could be controversial. I'd put Denver Jones because of his defense, and Bruce is ranting and bemoaning that he's not getting enough credit for how he can play defense. We love scorers, don't we?
Yeah.
But I don't think if you're mainly defense and you're not, game in, game out, a big scorer that's hard to put you in the top 5, but Denver would be top 10 maybe.
Yeah. And I'm going to say something real quick too. Hewlett and Dunn right down the street from Landers Ford, Poplar and Houston Levy. They're on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. Hewlett and Dunn made me think about something, about the 7,000 pairs of boots they have, the 50% off rack. They got a cool brand of clothing, folks, called Seeger, rugged outdoor wear. They've got Barber. They've got Filson. They've got great luggage. Raven Carpenter, Lydia, Charles Hall, his wife Laura, J.M. Huffman, Squidward, whole staff out there. Best looking clothes. You'll find them for men, women, and kids boots as well. Go to their website, hewlettanddunn.com. You can find anything and they will ship anywhere. So putting a boot into you from Hewlett and Dunn, it made me think about this. Nobody's mentioned Trey Johnson, Brad, in their top 5. And that tells you how many good players there are. And look at those boots. Those are the Arapoya boots right there. Anderson Bean. You go to Hewlett and Dunn go out there today. I'll be out there today. Great store, great people to work with. Unbelievable selection of clothes to keep you warm. Brad, would you Trey Johnson, Mark Sears, Zakai Ziegler. Here's a top 5 from our intern, Oakley McFerrin. Jani Broome, Walter Clayton Jr., Trey Johnson, Mark Sears, and Zakai Ziegler. So Oakley has, he's a freshman at Auburn. He's our intern. And William Halliday has been our intern. He's now going to be working for AU Undercover. But that's a strong top 5. But you know what's funny? Coach John Brady was on the show Wednesday, and he said, well, Mark Sears, I'd like to see him do a little bit more. He wants the ball. He wants to shoot. And I get that. But he didn't have Sears in his top 5. So, Brad, the world is waiting for the 4-wheel drive Landers top 5.
Man, I'll agree with the analysis of knowing the players is so tough for me. I'm not going to lie. I don't get a chance to watch as many games as I would like. And with as much as transfer portal happens in basketball, I had a conversation with one of the folks with Memphis, and we talked about, I feel like a lot of teams now are going to have the strategy of transfer portal, as opposed to high school recruits. And so your intern probably had a little bit more time to study this question than the rest of us on this call. So I envy him, but I don't know how you could say Mark Sears isn't in the top 5. I think that's kind of crazy. He's a spark on that team, and when they need somebody to take control and to be there at the end of the game, he's there. I think one of the things too is if you look at the stats throughout the SEC, it's so like there's a bunch of top teams where, like, you look at Missouri, they got 3 or 4 guys that are right there together points per game, and contribute per game.
Yeah.
And I pulled up some. There's you got 7 guys that are averaging, between 17 and 18 points a game. So you don't have a lot of spread to me between, just from a stat standpoint. Trey Johnson leads the league right now in points per game, but Texas is not, at one of those top echelon teams right now. And I think what that makes is you have a lot of good team basketball, which is helping some of these teams win games late in the season because they've learned how to play well with each other. I think that's one of the things about college basketball that's changed so dramatically over the last few years is those games at the beginning of season. A lot of these big programs have the talent, but they're trying to figure out how to play with each other and how do they flow? Who can I trust? Who do I pass the ball to in a moment where I need a big shot? And I think it takes a while for these guys to be able to figure that out. And that's what's been so impressive to me about Auburn is the entire year, I feel like they have been the most consistent program in the country, which is why Joe Lenardi says, hey, they can lose 2 games and still the number 1 overall seed, probably 3.
And, Brad, just to pick that up and run with it, normally if you're a team that's having the kind of historic season that Auburn's having, and you talked about all SEC, for example, you would have at least 2 players from that team on the first 5. But who is Auburn's number 2 in terms of most valuable? Denver Jones certainly is in that conversation. What he does, he plays the point. He plays the 2 guard, sometimes with Pettiford. He's a great defender. He could be the guy. But of late, in the last couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks, Chaney Johnson has emerged as an almost unstoppable scorer on the low block. You cannot block his shot. He shoots with such a high trajectory. He shoots that little turnaround. He rebounds. He gets up and down the floor. He had that run-out dunk against Arkansas the other night. But there's not one guy. That shows you, when I talk about Auburn being connected, there's so many guys that contribute, so many guys that make big, big shots when they got to have it. Everybody's favorite villain, Chad Baker Mazzara, is one of the most valuable players on that team. He gets under everybody's skin,
including mine,
including a lot of Auburn fans, I would suggest. Yes. That little jersey pop at Arkansas after hitting the 3, that's very soft to get a technical for. But they're looking at you, man. They're watching you.
Yeah, he's a mark man. Kevin, what you're saying is Janai's the only one in the top 5, and it's because that Bruce has tried to build this team like we're all talking about, to have 4 or 5 guys that any given night you don't know which one is going to show up and win the game for you. So it gets diluted. That none of them are getting 30-plus minutes, and you hope that helps you when you get in March Madness.
Doug, and Janai has to be the player of the year from the fact that he's on the number 1 team in the country, and he's the only player on that team that's in the top 25 in the SEC in scoring. He's the only player in that team in the top 25 in the SEC in rebounding, and he leads the team in assists. And it's the number 1. That to me is as wooden award as it gets. But that is
we shall see. Never underestimate the power of the Duke Blue Devils.
Yeah, ESPN, that narrative. Doug, I know you got to
listen. I want to wish you guys and our viewers and listeners a great weekend. That's a big one in Coleman Coliseum tomorrow, Brad. Good luck to y'all.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Yeah,
I got to roll too,
Thank
Rob.
you, Doug.
Thank you.
Hey, Brad, thank you so much. Landers Ford, man, get out there and ask for Brad Bellamy. He will take care of you. Best staff on the planet. LandersFordMemphis.com. Appreciate it. I will. I'm going to stop by and say hello. Right. We will be in Collierville. Thank you. Hey, Kevin, this is so much fun. In years past, I've always been a basketball junkie. I'm from Memphis. I grew up born into an Auburn family, but I have been to a gazillion Memphis Tiger basketball games. Used to sit in front of Big Jack Eaton, the voice of the Tigers growing up on the radio. And then now Dave Wolo does the games. I love college basketball. And the way you write about it and the way you describe it it's as if you are at Stillwater's back in the day playing cards at 2 a.m. with all the great writers covering college football, be it Auburn or Florida or Tennessee or LSU, Arkansas, Ole Miss, doesn't matter. You are now at the tip of the spear, Kevin. I want to give you this compliment. I mean it 110%, because you're making us we can't get enough of this basketball. And I've always said, when the fan bases at the schools and the SEC start getting as mad after a loss in basketball as they do in football, we're going to have some great basketball down here. And we'll wrap it up. I know you've got two sons at Florida, two Gators. I like Kerry Jones up in Lebanon, Tennessee. This guy's smart. Dylan Caldwell up for Defensive Player of the Year. Mazzaro is awesome. Here's don't forget about Josh Hubbard at Mississippi State. Boots Taylor at Texas A&M could be on the list. Chaney Johnson. Is Buzz Williams pound for pound the best coach in America? As Chuck Oliver says, I love Chuck Oliver over in Atlanta, does his daily football show Monday through Friday. It uses this term a lot, but Buzz Williams gets 50 pounds out of a 10-pound sack more than anybody. Kevin, I hope Buddy gets you on there about the great sports writers. He wants to get these writers. And I want to say this too. All these writers, and you knew Bill Lumpkin, you knew Charles Hollis. Who was your mentor as a writer? Birmingham is to sports writing, just in my opinion, what the Gulf Coast is to the beach and sunshine. There's just so many great writers, and you're one of them that have come out of there. And I'm like a kid on Christmas morning when I have you on here in these different, I can't help but get excited. Kind of lay the menu out, what you're going to be writing about, let people know how they can follow you, as always. And the more often we do this, I go back and I watch all these shows. I take a lot of notes. This is solid gold. It's like hearing George Klein, our old producer at WHBQ, tell Elvis stories. You couldn't get any closer to the king. And that's how I look at you with college basketball and football and everything else. Please never retire.
Well, thank you for all those kind words, Rob. I was very fortunate growing up in the business around the likes of Alf Van Hoos and Clyde Bolton and Jimmy Bryan and Wayne Martin and Charles. But my real, if you want to talk about a mentor, Charles Hollis, he was my big brother in journalism. And it's so sad when we lost him a few years ago. I always felt like, even though I was the Auburn beat writer at the time, he was the Alabama beat writer. I always felt like I was trying to compete with him and keep up with him. The best reporter, not sports reporter I've ever known, I've ever been around, ever watched work. He was unbelievable in how he could develop relationships, get people to share information with him, and then impart that information in an incredibly entertaining way. Charles, I miss him every day. He was the best. So I was very, very fortunate just to be around those type of legends in this business. And I learned something from them every day. Even now, I go back, I've got a box over, I've got all these articles that my dad saved that I wrote through the years, categorized by years in banker boxes. And I go back every once in a while. It's my own personal library. And I'll start reading a story by Clyde Bolton, who is one of the best pure writers I've ever been around. Clyde could make a convention of insurance agents sound as exciting as a Final Four game. He would find an angle. He would find a story within that group. So I was very, very fortunate. This is a great time of year. We're a week away from March. Big basketball games everywhere you turn. I can't wait for Memphis to come to UAB on Sunday, March 2nd. Hopefully that will be an American Conference Championship type game in the regular season. UAB's just a game back now since Memphis dropped one. And then the high school state tournament, like I said, I'll be the host all week long, first on the NFHS network, as well as WOTM here in the state, and then starting Thursday with the championship games on Alabama Public Television. Hope people will check that out. And also follow me. The most fun thing to do, follow me on Twitter. I still call it Twitter, at Kevin Scarbinsky. We have some spirited discussions. And to go to your point, Rob, you know basketball's made it. I heard Rodney Orr from Tighter Insider, I know you know him well, said after the Alabama-Missouri loss that his message board lit up like a Christmas tree with Alabama fans unhappy that the fact that a week ago, the number 2 team in the country, now the number 4 team in the country, had just lost its second straight game. So maybe basketball has finally arrived in the state of Alabama. I know it has in so many different ways, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
Well, I'll just say this. You're doing for college basketball in Alabama and the Deep South what Chef Paul Prudhomme did for blackened fish. Think about that. That's how important you
I'm
are.
humbled.
So
I'm
have a
humbled
great
by that
weekend,
comparison.
Kevin.
Thanks, Rob.
Well, it is true. Have a great weekend. We'll get you back on here with us next week. That is Kevin Scarbinsky, folks, the only U.S. Basketball Hall of Fame writer ever from the state of Alabama. And when I'm on a show with someone like Buddy Martin and Franz Beard and these great writers, it is so cool because you better remember to indent 5 spaces to the right, dot your I's, cross your T's, and get it right. Not get it first, but get it right. For executive producer Brenden Martin, the best in the business, who will have his birthday next Tuesday. And let's all wish Brenden on the show. We're going to make it Brendan's birthday show. We're going to have a lot of fun with that. Great guy, great dad. Love him. Everybody have a great weekend, because most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Support all of our sponsors like My Town Roofing, Matei's Garage in East Memphis, Tom Martin's Body Shop. Blessed is an understatement. And the new branding, the old vitamin shop out there off of Jackson Avenue. So till then, have a great weekend. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you Monday.